to start going into the issue of, I'm not sure if it's the issue or the term of male disposability. I've been hearing that a lot from MRA websites, and I haven't ever heard of that before I started researching the men's rights movement. What is male disposability?
It is the mindset that men are seen in utilitarian terms, that what I noted earlier was that 93% of workplace deaths are male. Men are socialized to put their necks on the chopping block, to expose themselves to elements, to take on dangerous jobs, to work on crab boats, to drive trucks, to do any number of really, really dangerous things in order to provide for people that they care about. And that is just an extension of where we've always been as a human species. I think if you take it back 3 million years to the African savannah, you'll find that if men didn't protect women through gestation and early childhood, that we wouldn't have made it very far as a species. So men, to that degree, had to be disposable. It was a survival tool. They had to be willing to die in order to have women live and to have children live. The thing is, we're not still on the African savannah anymore. We live in comparatively an extremely safe society that does not require men to assume this huge lion's share of the risk, but we still expect them to. It's why still over 97% of our combat deaths are male. We have the same rules set up for men that they've always lived by, that you need to protect and provide at any cost. It's the old standard of women and children first. The first spots in the lifeboats are for women. There was the Concordia when it sank just a couple of years ago. The first call they put out on the intercom was women and children first. We're still living by rules that have governed our society for thousands of years where it concerns men, but we've changed everything where it concerns women. And they are living by an entirely different set of rules. They now have access to everything men have always had access to education, to work, to whatever they want to do. But there's unfortunately no real sharing of the actual burdens for what it takes to operate and maintain this society. It is still men carrying the lion's share, and it is still the expectation that if somebody's going to go down with the ship, it's going to be men. There is a lot of people that look at that and interpret it as whining. I'm pretty sure none of them are the ones standing on the deck of the ship when it's happening, and they're not the ones in the coal mines. They're not the ones driving the semis all across this country. A very, very dangerous job. These things are real life and death situations for a very, very large number of people. We tend to look at men in the upper 1 percentile in a couple of different ways. When we talk about what men are in this society, we look at CEOs of different companies, we look at people in government, we look at people who have authority, who have money, and who have power. That is not 99.5% of men. That is a very, very small group of people. We call it the glass ceiling. Feminists have talked for years about the difficulties in breaking through the glass ceiling. They're not talking about the difficulties in breaking into the glass cellar. They're not pushing for entry into the death jobs. You don't hear the National Organization for Women complaining that there is just not enough female ditch diggers in this world. When we view men with that very, very fractional population, as though it applies to all of them, as though all men are senators and congressmen and CEOs, we're doing a huge disservice to everybody. One, it's not honest. And number two, it paints a false portrayal of the lives of actual men in this society every day. they don't live lives of power. They live lives of sacrifice. Often they live lives of pain. And we see that reflected in their suicide rate. We see that reflected in their rates of depression and alcohol abuse, their rates of imprisonment. Looking at men and looking at the male role as though it is somehow in the embodiment of personal power is one of the grossest deceptions ever peddled on this society. We don't have a society of powerful men. We have a society of men that are bound to duty and obligation, and we have increasingly a society of women that have come to expect that slot in the 1%, as though they have been robbed of it all these years, when really almost everybody, very few people ever get into that position. It's blown quite a bit out of context. The other side of it that we tend to view men as in terms of a very, very small fraction of them is the other end of the bell curve. The tiny minority of men that are rapists, the minority of men that are violent against their spouses, and it is a minority. It is not the majority of men. So what we do is we view men on one hand as though they're all in the upper 1 percentile of powerful men, and on the other hand, as though they're all in the lower 1 percentile of intelligence and violence, and everybody in between is ignored, and their struggles are ignored. A Voice for Men wants the society to wake up to that and to start doing something more than just acknowledging it a little bit.
So you say that the upper 1% of men are in the government and are the CEOs of these big corporations, and so the majority of the 1% are men, and those are positions of power. So wouldn't a feminist be correct in saying that men do have the power in this country because they are the 1%?
I think that looking at men in government and saying that they have all the power is like looking at women in grocery stores and saying they have all the food. It is not the same thing to be in a position of power and actually having it. Who are these men brokering power for? Their constituency. I mean, their families. Aren't these congressmen married to women that benefit from those positions? Don't their children benefit from those positions? We have an electorate that is the majority female. If women are being held back from these positions, why isn't the female electorate electing more women? Because they're not running for those positions. It is available to them. There is nobody stopping women from running for these positions. What we see in our culture is that there are more men willing. Imagine what it takes to be a successful politician. Imagine how much of your personal life that you give up, how much you work, how much privacy that you sacrifice, how much freedom in your day-to-day life that goes out the window. There are more men willing to do those things than there are women. And that doesn't mean that women aren't civically minded. It doesn't mean that they don't care about the culture that they live in. But women are socialized to think more about what is, I would call lifestyle choices. What's comfortable for them? What do they want to pursue? We socialize women in this way. And being a corporate CEO isn't something that fits in with a lot of comfortable lifestyle choices. It is about sacrifice. It's about work, and often it's work that leads people to early graves. They have a phenomena, and have had in Japan for years, of men that work themselves to death in their 30s and 40s. I forget what the name of it is. They actually have a name for it, of these guys working 12, 14, 16-hour days, 6 and 7 days a week in corporations, and they come in many times and find them dead at their desks, slumped over their paperwork. That isn't power. The idea that that is power is pretty insane when you start looking at what are the real day-to-day lives of these people that we consider to be so powerful. Are they running around twirling their mustaches and thinking of ways to oppress people? Are they calling the shots for everybody in the world? Or are they working like slaves in order to get ahead and then turning around and taking the resources that they have earned and generated and taking care of others with it? If anybody thinks that's really a position of power, then I would argue that they really don't understand power. Power is about being able to make choices. Power, in one way, in the truest sense, the ability to stay alive. Alive is power. If you can keep breathing air and making choices and pursuing things that you want to do in life, how can you be any more powerful than that? The fact that you're successful in some model that we have culturally that says that if you make it to one of the top rungs in the corporation, then you're a powerful person. Well, yeah, you probably are powerful with the 15 or 20 people around you where you work. But are you really powerful in that position? I think this society needs a re-examination of what power means to begin with.